Welcome to our exploration of the Battle of Cannae, one of history's most significant military engagements. This pivotal battle took place on August 2nd, 216 BC, during the Second Punic War between the Roman Republic and Carthage. The battle occurred near the ancient village of Cannae in southeast Italy, a region that would become the site of one of Rome's greatest military disasters. The battle pitted Hannibal Barca, the brilliant Carthaginian general, against a much larger Roman army led by consuls Lucius Aemilius Paulus and Gaius Terentius Varro. This battle stands as one of Rome's most catastrophic defeats, with estimated casualties between 50 and 70,000 Roman soldiers. It remains a classic case study in military tactics, demonstrating how superior strategy can overcome numerical disadvantage. As we explore this battle further, we'll uncover how Hannibal's tactical genius created a template for battlefield maneuvers that military commanders have studied for over 2,000 years. The Second Punic War, fought between 218 and 201 BC, was part of a series of conflicts between Rome and Carthage for dominance in the Mediterranean. These two powers had already fought in the First Punic War, which established Rome as a naval power. Carthage, seeking to rebuild its strength, expanded into Spain under the leadership of Hannibal Barca, father of Hannibal. In 218 BC, Hannibal led his army, including war elephants, from Spain through Gaul and across the treacherous Alps into Italy. This audacious move brought the war directly to Roman territory, where Hannibal won two significant early victories. At the Battle of Trebia in December 218 BC, Hannibal tricked the Romans into crossing a freezing river before ambushing and defeating them with his superior cavalry. 6 months later, in June 217 BC, he ambushed another Roman army along the shores of Lake Trasimene, using morning fog to conceal his troops. This battle resulted in 15,000 Romans killed or captured. Following these defeats, Rome appointed Quintus Fabius Maximus as dictator, who adopted a cautious approach of shadowing Hannibal's army while avoiding direct battle. The Romans, growing impatient with this defensive strategy, eventually gathered their largest army yet, led by consuls Lucius Aemilius Paulus, who favored caution, and Gaius Terentius Varro, who pushed for aggressive action. By summer 216 BC, the stage was set for a decisive confrontation as the Romans marched to confront Hannibal near the village of Cannae, determined to crush the Carthaginian threat once and for all. Hannibal's strategic brilliance was fully demonstrated at the Battle of Cannae. Hannibal carefully selected the battlefield at Cannae, positioning his army on the plain with the Aufidus River protecting one flank. He had a deep understanding of Roman tactics and psychology, anticipating their aggressive approach under the command of the consuls Varro and Paulus. Hannibal developed a masterful plan with a counterintuitive formation. He placed his weakest troops in the center and his strongest forces on the flanks. This unusual deployment was deliberately designed to create a trap for the advancing Roman forces. As the Romans advanced, Hannibal's center would gradually give way, while his wings would hold firm and eventually envelop the advancing Romans, completing the trap. This brilliant strategy demonstrated Hannibal's genius in psychological warfare and tactical innovation. As the Roman historian Livy later observed, Hannibal knew how to win victories as well as how to use them. The Battle of Cannae in 216 BCE demonstrated Hannibal's military genius through his famous double-envelopment tactic. The battle began with Roman forces in their traditional dense formation, facing the Carthaginian army. As the Romans pushed forward, Hannibal's center deliberately gave ground, creating a bulge in the Carthaginian line. Meanwhile, Hannibal's superior cavalry defeated the Roman horsemen on both flanks. The Carthaginian cavalry was both more numerous and more skilled. After defeating the Roman cavalry, Hannibal's horsemen circled behind the Roman infantry, completing the first stage of encirclement. As the Romans continued to press forward, Hannibal's infantry on the wings held firm. Combined with the cavalry behind them, the Romans were gradually encircled in a classic double envelopment. This double envelopment tactic has become legendary in military history. It required perfect coordination between infantry and cavalry and exploited the Romans' aggressive but inflexible tactics. Military historians consider it perhaps the most perfect battle of encirclement ever fought. As the trap closed around the Roman forces, they found themselves completely surrounded with nowhere to escape. The Carthaginians methodically closed in from all sides, creating one of history's first documented cases of total encirclement. What had been a numerical advantage for the Romans became their greatest weakness. The soldiers were packed so tightly they could barely lift their weapons to defend themselves. The slaughter lasted for hours as the Carthaginian forces methodically eliminated the trapped Roman army. The resulting casualties were catastrophic. Between 50 and 70,000 Romans were killed or captured in a single day. This represented nearly 20% of Rome's male citizens of military age, a demographic catastrophe almost unparalleled in ancient warfare. The Battle of Cannae would go down in history as one of the most devastating military defeats ever recorded. The immediate aftermath of the Battle of Cannae was devastating for Rome. Consul Aemilius Paulus was killed along with 80 senators and many military tribunes. The total Roman losses were catastrophic, with estimates between 50 and 70,000 soldiers. Following this disastrous defeat, several Roman allies in southern Italy began to defect to Hannibal. Most notably, Capua, one of Rome's richest and most important allies, opened its gates to Hannibal's forces. Panic gripped the city of Rome as citizens feared Hannibal would march directly on the capital. Rome enacted extraordinary emergency measures in response to the crisis. These included rare human sacrifices, appointing Quintus Fabius Maximus as dictator, and mobilizing all available manpower, including slaves and prisoners. Despite having the opportunity to attack Rome directly after his victory, Hannibal chose not to march on the city. This decision has been debated by historians for centuries. Some argue Hannibal was right, as he lacked siege equipment and Rome's walls were formidable. Others contend this was his greatest mistake, missing the opportunity to end the war and allowing Rome time to recover. This decision would ultimately prove consequential for the outcome of the entire war. Rome demonstrated remarkable resilience after the catastrophic defeat at Cannae. Rather than surrender, the Roman Senate took an unprecedented step of thanking the surviving consul Varro for, in their words, not despairing of the Republic. Rome adopted a new defensive strategy under the leadership of Fabius Maximus. Instead of meeting Hannibal's forces in direct battle, the Romans adopted what became known as Fabian tactics, avoiding pitched battles while slowly wearing down the enemy through attrition. Perhaps most impressive was Rome's ability to quickly mobilize new forces after losing nearly 80,000 men at Cannae. The Romans raised new armies, including arming slaves and young boys barely of military age, showing their absolute determination to continue fighting. This period demonstrated Rome's extraordinary capacity for mobilization and recovery, with their military strength gradually rebuilding in the years after Cannae. Rome's refusal to consider surrender despite overwhelming defeat would ultimately prove decisive in the Second Punic War. The Battle of Cannae has become one of the most studied military engagements in history. Military academies worldwide still teach Hannibal's double-envelopment tactic as a perfect example of battlefield strategy. The German Schlieffen Plan in World War I was partly inspired by Cannae, as was Rommel's tank strategy in North Africa during World War II. The battle demonstrates timeless principles of warfare. First, the importance of mobility. Second, the value of superior intelligence. And third, how a numerically inferior force can defeat a larger one through better tactics and leadership. To this day, Cannae remains the gold standard for tactical brilliance in military studies. In examining the historical significance of Cannae, we discover a profound paradox. Despite achieving one of the most brilliant tactical victories in military history, Hannibal ultimately lost the war to Rome. Rome's ability to absorb such devastating losses illustrates the crucial difference between tactical and strategic victory. Rome demonstrated extraordinary resilience by refusing to negotiate, raising new armies, and maintaining strategic focus despite the catastrophic defeat. Today, the term Cannae has entered military vocabulary as shorthand for the complete encirclement and destruction of an enemy force. The Battle of Cannae offers enduring lessons for modern military and political thinking. Perhaps the most important lesson from Cannae is that individual victories, however decisive, don't necessarily determine the outcome of wars. Strategic resilience can overcome tactical brilliance in the long run. This principle remains as relevant in modern conflict and competition as it was over 2,000 years ago.